So today I'd like to welcome academic, author, podcaster, musician, activist, Sizwe Mpofu Walsh to the podcast. He's a lecturer, host of the long-running current affairs podcast, SMWX, and what I consider a very interesting person when I look at the journey that you've taken. So first of all, welcome.
Thank you, Kojo. Great to be with you. You came on my podcast.
Yes.
When I was around 100 episodes or so glad to return the favor.
During COVID, so this is nice.
This is very much better than...
that was online. And
yeah.
That was right after my book came out, I think.
Yeah, I recall that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you want to be when you grew up? So if I'd met you at like 12 years old.
Yeah, absolutely certain to be a soccer player. That was my abiding passion. I was very serious about soccer for a long time in my teens. And so if you speak to the people who know me, they were like, the first passion was definitely soccer.
Was there a path? I mean, did you see a path or way of you achieving that?
Yeah, I harbored dreams to play in the Premier League for Liverpool. And, I ended up playing for the Pirates Academy, so took it relatively far. But I've also always been someone who's interested in so many different things. And that gives you great range and, complex experiences. But there often comes a time when it's like, okay, is it going to be only this? And that time came when I was about 16, 17, at which time music was becoming a passion, school, etc. And then I decided, no, it wouldn't be only that. But I mean, also like the players were just getting better and better. And I was like, not as good as I used to be comparatively. So I was like, no, I don't think I want to invest my entire life in this pursuit.
Where does that come from? That let's call it deliberateness, or at least thoughtfulness. Just kind of thinking through, contextualizing kind of those different experiences.
I'm not sure if in the moment it is as premeditated, but life just takes you into places where you're forced to make decisions, and then you make those decisions. And then you live with those decisions, Sometimes, like, still, I kind of regret, like, why not? Why not? But the way I console myself is life is long, and you want to, what you lose in immediate decisions going down one specific track, I hope you start to gain later in life as your experiences broaden and deepen. So, that's one thing that consoles me. I remember listening to this podcast about people who love doing many different things, and it was like, just wait, because the plan is that it converges, but it takes really long for it to converge. So it's not going to converge in your 20s, probably not even your 30s, maybe not your 40s, but it will converge, hopefully.
It will. It's something I was thinking about actually just the other day. So I had an experience where I was a sprinter.
I recall.
That's what I wanted to do.
Listen to your footsteps.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I was actually just reflecting on it recently, because I'm a big proponent of journaling. This idea that when I stopped doing that, I had enough other things to occupy my attention, occupy my time.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking about this idea of regret, right? Like, so I don't regret. Like, it would have been nice if I'd been able to continue.
Yeah.
But I also realized that in my mind, my theory is that there's a whole bunch of other things that I've done that if I had gone down that path as my core focus, I probably wouldn't have explored these other things to the depth that I have explored them.
Yeah. No, that resonates. Sometimes, depends what we mean by regret, but I do feel like regret is part of life, because you can only go down one specific path, and there are there are infinite paths, and you can see all of them often, and then you have to choose, and you simply just never know what the alternative would look like. And so I suppose there's always a part of you that lives with, what does the alternative universe look like? And then you have to come to peace with the fact that it's impossible to live all of those at once.
Yeah.
But how do you make this particular one that you're on as full and as wholesome as it can be? But I also do think, I'm not sure if you feel this, but like, you then can draw from these places in weird ways. Like, I mean, I guess your book is like a sprinting analogy, but it's literature, and so that is something that like gets me out of bed. Like, what are the weird convergences that come when you explore multiple routes?
My epiphany was going into magazine one day and kind of looking at a dummy and realizing that because I've done so many different things, because I've been a professional jack of all trades.
Yeah.
In that moment, that was my convergence moment, where it was I could interact with all the stories and all the different topics at a level, deeper than just surface.
Yeah.
I understood enough of each space to be able to contribute or add value to, the range of articles I was reading.
Yeah.
So if you're talking to a sports person, I kind of understand a bit of the psyche. If it's music, because I was in poetry and I've worked in that space, had enough of understanding. I had an IT company I used to write, I had an IT company, and then I became a tech journal. So I used to write on tech. So all of those little bits and pieces.
Exactly. Yeah.
The one day I was like, oh, that's why I've done all this stuff. Because when I was doing it, there was no order to it.
Yeah.
It was just, trying to live and trying to survive. And that's the opportunity that's there.
Yeah. I feel the same way currently with the podcast. Like, I can bring so many different parts of who I am and what I'm interested in into this one place, and read, speak, think, talk to people from multiple different backgrounds and try to extract things from them, and you feel a sense in which, like, okay, now all of the different things you've learned have come together in one place, which is quite liberating. It's quite liberating, but you need to take time to see it like that, because I think one of the problems I've had is, like, I do all these things, but then I never really think about how do I harmonize, Like, so I'm trying to get better at, trying to like bring the pieces together now, rather than just like exploring. And
the question also becomes, do you need to harmonize?
That is the question. Yeah, it maybe not, maybe not. Maybe the beauty is in like the difference of these activities, and it's, you've got to find things that like bring you joy and stuff that gets you out of bed. Like, and for me, it's just, I feel exhausted by like single tracks and single pursuits. I need more than that.
This is very surreal for me because essentially yesterday I was sitting down journaling about all of this stuff.
Wow.
Like literally everything that you're saying, like I'm still trying to figure it out. And having eased into like we were talking earlier, like having eased into this year, I tried to really ease into the year.
Yeah.
And the thing that I used to do often was like on the first, I'd sit and kind of look at, okay, what's the year ahead? And I haven't done that for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And I decided to do it again this year.
Okay.
So literally yesterday, I was sitting kind of, I went for coffee and cake.
Nice.
And I was just sitting journaling about all these things, kind of going, okay, I understand that we must be focused, right? And I've read all the productivity books. I've tried to take on board a lot of these things.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I'm wired to do multiple things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And trying to find that balance and trying to find the answer for me. Like, do I need to focus on one thing? If I don't, and I continue to do the multiple things, how do I do it to ensure that I'm giving, at least in the moment, I'm giving each thing the attention it deserves? And does it really need to fit into this one whole picture? Isn't the whole picture just me?
Yeah, sure. And I also, like, again, as I'm trying to make sense of this situation, this attempt to pursue multiple different things, I think it's also a question of, like, not everything has to be on level 10 at the same time. So there are seasons when this pursuit is at level 10, but the other one is just bubbling under, and it's gaining and growing, and you're just learning about it. And then sometimes it's 50-50, and then this one takes over and this one falls. So not putting pressure on yourself to be doing all of them at the same intensity all the time, but accepting that there will be different moments where different parts will be accentuated, I think is key. And I've certainly seen this over the last few years, where, like, this podcast, which is now nearly 7 years old, for crying out loud, like, was just a pursuit, and then slowly it has grown to almost be like a V level 10 intensity thing in terms of professional projects. Since we're in conversation mode, can I ask about your journaling method? Like, is there a way that you do the journaling thing at the beginning of the year? Is it, like, more free form, or do you have, like, certain things you want to hit, or is it like, do you do it the same way?
So I now kind of do, and I have two parts to it. So one, I've done kind of morning pages, Julia Cameron's morning pages, for a good 7-8 years.
Okay.
Which is basically stream of consciousness, 3 pages, handwritten, with her. So mine is kind of a version of it, because hers is, you do that in the morning when you wake up, you start your day like that.
Oh, okay.
Before anything else, you sit down and just write 3 pages, no plan, no order, just, mental vomit onto the page. I have to take my daughter to school, kids to school, come back, and then I have my coffee and my stuff. So it's part of my routine, but I'll do that. And that's what I've been doing consistently, like I said, since probably I've been consistent since 2017. Okay. Before that, I was kind of off and on. And I do during weekdays, because weekends I sleep in.
Oh, okay.
When I can.
Yeah.
So I've now added a second journal. So I always used to have like my little poetry notebook, but it's been 10 years since I haven't written poetry regularly. But I always had a notebook to scribble in poetry whenever it came to mind. So I've just opened towards end of last year, a second journal. And that one is for, let's say, single thoughts.
Okay.
Or single moments. What I mean by that is, so for example, yesterday I was sitting coffee shop and I was just reflecting on other stuff. So I literally wrote a page, just kind of reflecting on that. And then I'll have like, I want to write more essays. So I'm starting to kind of document essay topics.
Okay. Yeah.
And literally just bullet points. Then sometimes I'll just doodle. But each page is a single thought, whereas my morning page is just, I mean, each line can jump between different things.
Interesting.
But also with journaling, and I've been exploring it a lot more and starting to do some writing and some speaking around it. Just in terms of the different ways you can journal, because there are 101 forms. But it's about finding the one that makes sense for you and works for you in that moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm running 2 now.
Interesting. Very interesting.
And the music, when did the shift into the music? And I mean, it's interesting because it happened when you were in high school.
Yeah.
I remember I only made the connection many years later.
Yeah.
I knew the song. That's when I was really following, music and the industry and writing music. So I remember the song with Entity and it catching my attention and having conversations about it. And then years later going, oh, wait.
Isn't that
the same guy?
Yeah. It's funny because there are people who know me from Entity and there are people who know the podcast. And often there's this moment where it's like, wait, you are... do you gave us a poetry workshop, all 3 of us from Entity at St. John's. Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah. And it was actually quite a good moment for our writing. And I remember we went back and thought about it because we'd only been writing rap lyrics, but it helped us unlock a more poetic part of our voice.
It's crazy.
I
actually didn't remember most of the workshops I did.
I
didn't do them a lot. But
Yeah. So the music come from quite a musical family, especially, actually on my father's side, no one's necessarily a musician, but it's just very musical. Entire choirs get produced in family gatherings and things. And I always heard stories of my father's family, immediate family, his siblings, his mother, they stayed in a 1-bedroom shack in Duncan Village. And one of the ways that they would come together is they would sing together as a family. There's a musician who's unfortunately passed away who is, he was married to my mom, but before I was born, called John Oakley Smith. And so I have a brother, and John Oakley Smith was his father. And he was a folk musician in Joburg in the 70s, etc. Incredible lyricist and musician. So I grew up in that milieu. And I was in a rock band in primary school, at Sacred Heart, where I went to primary school. Funnily enough, the person who I was in a rock band with now is quite a celebrated jazz musician, Vuma Levine. And then got to St. John's in high school. And suddenly it's a very white environment. It's changed quite a lot now, especially the student body. But then it was sometimes there would be 3 or 4 black people in the entire year, or whatever. And so, and this is the birth of hip hop as a true cultural phenomenon. And so we're watching hip hop music videos. We're seeing these legendary figures of hip hop emerging, and we're in St. John's as black South Africans, and hip hop then becomes this kind of medium of confident black cultural expression that I think we latched onto. I mean, we weren't thinking about it like that, but it was a way of asserting our identities and our artistic impulses through that channel. And so, that's where it started. And we ended up, getting very serious about making music, about music production, about lyricism. And I have very fond memories of that time.
Why step away from it? It did feel, I mean, you guys were young, but it also, you're saying, it was a particular time, and there'd been the guys before you had kind of laid a certain foundation. And it was getting to the point where one could at least see some semblance of, let's call it a career within that space. I mean,
absolutely.
The Amus and Dumis and all of them coming from like the club days, and they were kind of the pioneers where there was no real kind of path to, oh, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Whereas you guys came out and there was enough attention around you at that time for one to be able to go, oh. And if you look at what, Keenan, AKA, eventually did, that was the perceived trajectory.
Yeah, certainly. It was one of those moments, one of those soccer moments. So we released our album when we were in grade 11 in 2005. And Kenan tells a funny story about this, but just like to release an album in 2005 was a different thing. Like you had to get into a studio and you had to like produce it from scratch. And so it extracted a lot from us. And when you look at what Kenan did, like, he became a legendary figure, but we were so disappointed with the result. Like we were like, this is going to be a Grammy-winning album, like obviously. And then, it came out and Touch and Go, I think we only released as a video like a year later. And that's when people started recognizing. And but it was a bit anticlimactic. And we're in matric at the time, like you're thinking, what am I going to do? Applying for university, etc. And then eventually, because I knew that I was going for Xhosa initiation, what was somehow decided between me and my family was that I would go and live for a year in the rural Eastern Cape where my father comes from, wanted to learn Xhosa better in preparation for my initiation. So then we were confronted with this thing, like, I'm going to be away for a year. What do we do with this musical project? And so we actually recorded like a second album because I would come back that year, which I was listening back to the other day. But yeah, eventually it was just like when I was in the Eastern Cape, I started gravitating more towards like I wanted to go to university. I wanted to learn like politics and philosophy and economics. And then eventually I decided I was going to go to UCT. And then it just became impossible, because I would have been in a different city. Kenan and Tlantla would have been here. And then, I remember sitting down with the guys and just saying like, I think we're probably going to have to wrap it up. And that was interestingly a very profound moment for Kenan, because he had put all his eggs in the musical basket.
Okay.
And I think it was quite difficult for him because he was like, okay, well, wow, then I'm going to have to do this myself, and boy, did he. Yeah.
And it does require a certain element of maturity to not get caught up in the idea of what you can do in certain space when you talk about building a life. Like, to be able to say to yourself, okay, I think I want to go to university and I want to study these things, and this is great. And perhaps, the having gone through the football process, probably made that easier.
Yeah,
in terms of actually, this is great and looks fabulous, but the life I want to build, having a sense of building a life.
Yeah, absolutely, and all that glitters and all of that stuff. Like, I think there was a discomfort with the music industry versus the music creation process, especially when we were so young. It really took us into some spaces that were disquieting and discomforting, and one didn't necessarily realize it at the time, but you recoiled against it. And so being in the music industry young makes you realize what being a journalist later makes you realize is like people in front of cameras doing these apparently glamorous things are almost never as glamorous as when you see it up front, up close. And so like coming to terms with that and coming to terms with the music industry in South Africa at that time, and not feeling entirely comfortable with like what it would take to have to navigate that world, even though I really loved the process of creation. However, I have never stopped harboring like the intention or the hope to one day like remake a musical project, and well, I actually did do one musical project, but I don't think I'll ever stop loving making music. Yeah.
Is it something that you do regularly? Does it have a space right now in your world?
Yeah, increasingly. So I've always made, since that time, I've made music because we would produce the music and write the lyrics. So I've got like quite a big archive of beats and ideas and songs. But in and around that early time of transitioning to UCT, I then also got married quite early. And then I was navigating marriage, and then, a musical project was not on the horizon. But I actually have an album written, it's completely different. It's about love. And so, yeah, I would like to explore that project, and I'm thinking of how it could work.
I think we are living in a time, and when you've created at least enough of a foundation for yourself in terms of your life, I think it's not necessarily a privilege, but it's a beautiful space to be in, where you can go, I have these things that I do because they fulfill me.
Yeah.
And I'll figure out what I do with it.
Absolutely.
Not looking at it from, how am I going to sell it? Where's the money in it?
Exactly.
All the things that capitalism tells us should be our foundation to the world of, the world of work and to life. Getting to the point where you realize that actually, no, not everything has to fit within this particular lane. I'm curious about, you're talking about, for example, going to St. John's, right? How you have navigated kind of identity, particularly coming from a country where race is still, well, having come from outside into the country where it feels like race is still the thing.
Yeah.
The main thread. But you're talking about, for example, going to the village to to reconnect with Xhosa culture a lot more, and the language and that sort of stuff. And how have you navigated it within a South African context?
It's a constant juggle, and it's something that evolves all the time, particularly given the complexities first of South African society and then my identity. And I don't need to tell you about hybridity of identity and all of that. But in my early life, so identity I think of as the interplay between how you see yourself and how the world sees you. Right? So you're always negotiating that, and you can't get out of either of the two. Right? You can try to pretend like, oh, the world sees me differently to who I really am, but like it really matters sometimes how the world interprets you. And vice versa. Like you can't allow the world's interpretation of you to completely determine your own interpretation of yourself. I think it's been in phases. So one thing most people don't know about me is often because they see me through the lens of my father, who's well-known, controversial, if you want, to some, beloved other politician and lawyer. I actually was raised by my mom, who's white. So I actually grew up in this kind of single parent household as an only child with a white mother. So that was the first negotiation that began. And it was interesting because sometimes we'd walk, and I remember feeling discomfort walking with her, like in a mall or something, because people would often, or not necessarily often, but I'd often be worried about this. And people actually did do this, ask her, quote, where she got me. Right. So I remember feeling a discomfort of like, I don't want to go out in public because I don't want that gaze and that constant stare. So there was that navigation that had to be done. And I think maybe that's partly why when I got to, and then I went to a very diverse school. Sacred Heart in the 90s was like some kind of utopia of multiculturalism. I don't know how they got it right, but for that time they did. But then going to St. John's, there was a sense in which I now was going to rebel against the extremely white culture of the school and being surrounded by that much whiteness in a black country, and felt a need in my teenage years to really reconnect with my father's side of the identity, which reached its peak when I left Joburg to go to rural Eastern Cape and like lived in the rural Eastern Cape for a year. And then I suppose it took like another evolution where I also had to learn that my experience could not be described only as a Black South African experience. And so I couldn't wholly identify purely as a Black South African, because I was like raised by a white mother in a suburb, and I have white heritage, and my son is born and he has blonde hair, and I'm like, what's going on? So, and then when I was in Oxford in the UK, then there's a whole different interpretation of blackness, and then I'm trying to I'm still figuring out the South African, and then now I've got this British blackness question, which is all about how no, don't try to claim blackness because your experience is different to what blackness is. And in South Africa, we have a completely different, more all-encompassing definition of blackness. To the point where now I've just submitted to the complexity. Yeah, and I don't try to ascribe too many labels. I don't necessarily want to feel that I'm part of this or other group. I just know that I live in some liminal space of identity. But at the same time, and maybe this traces back to our earlier conversation, maybe this is partly why we like doing many different things. It's it gives you this portal into worlds which just people cannot see, and so sometimes you feel like only you can see the different extremes of these different worlds, and people in either side just cannot, they haven't had experiences intimate enough, like family experiences to bridge. And then that can give you a certain ability to straddle and appreciate very different and diverse things. So with the complexity and with the grappling comes a social, maybe even an emotional nuance that allows you to occupy a lot more worlds than most people can.
Yeah. Is there any way you feel you belong?
Not in the...
Is that something that you think about? And I ask
No,
it because it's something that I think about. Because often, for a large part of my life, I felt I belong in certain spaces, but I also feel like I'm on the edges of it.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of complexity and those being able to straddle.
Yeah.
So it's not quite feeling like I belong because I straddle multiple spaces. And few understand that. That's for sure. And I think we are forever doomed to be to be there. So no, I sometimes I see other people doing this and I'm like, wow, so that's you. You're just you're fully embraced and there's no form of difference about you. And I'm like, wow, that must be very comfortable. If I go to the Kukwala, the Xhosa village where I am, of course, I can observe rituals and I've undergone ceremonies and stuff, but I'm clearly very different from the people around me, right? So no, I don't feel like when I'm there, I'm a Xhosa villager, nor do I feel like that when
when I'm at St. John's, and it's like, but I think that the solace is that you're able to be in so many spaces that you get a sense of belonging in more places than other people get. So you get multiple forms of not full belonging.
Yeah.
Which is its own joy and its own difficulty.
I never actually thought about that. I remember over
Yeah.
a year ago going to a friend's son's, so I went to Mgidi. And one of my friends said, so she remarked, she was like, I know that you'll always be fine.
Yeah.
So I wasn't worried.
Exactly.
And I mean, you know, the heart of Xhosa land.
Yeah. Dropped in there.
I understand.
Yeah.
You know, I understand a little bit. I mean, I don't really speak the language.
Yeah.
But I'm comfortable.
Absolutely.
Like, you can put me there, and I can find my little space within it, right?
Like within an instant.
And be cool. And even if I'm chilling on my own, it's like I don't feel. It's not because I feel ostracized or uncomfortable. It's like also I'm comfortable in my own space. So it's like,
absolutely,
you know, go and do you. I'm here and I'm fine.
Yeah.
And I've never actually thought about it from that perspective, which is, you kind of get, like you said, half experiences or half belonging in multiple spaces, whereas most people just feel comfortable in one space and then everywhere else just feels
like complete fish out of water. Yeah, like I was recently in the Middle East and I'm like exactly the same. Like, bloop, dropped in, fine. Like navigate, fine. Completely different space, but somehow you develop the tools to just be fine wherever you are. Brazil, US, Europe, Africa, probably Australia. Never been there, but yeah, like I'm sure if we went to China, we'd be okay, man. Like.
I did actually go to China for 8 days.
I'd really like to go to China, actually.
I loved China.
Yeah.
So I used to tease my father. My father used to go to China before he passed. He used to go to China quite regularly for a good 10 plus years. Like you'd go every New Year. So I'd spend, before I got married and had kids and stuff, I'd go to Lesotho when I was already in Joburg, and I'd go to Lesotho, spend Christmas with him.
Yeah.
And then literally on the 26th or 27th, drop him off at the airport. And you'd either go to China or Taiwan.
Wow.
And I always used to joke with him. I'm like, dude, like, what is it? And first time I went, I was fortunate enough to go for 8 days. And it was literally a press trip, but like essentially a tourist trip. So I did Beijing, Hangzhou, and Shanghai.
Wow.
It was 8 days. I did Tiananmen Square, Forbidden City, Summer Palace, Great Wall.
Wow.
And having been raised by a Pan-Africanist, who my perception of people like Mao Zedong, Yasser Arafat, Che, Fidel Castro was not influenced by, your American lens. So to a certain extent, these were like some of my heroes growing up. So to kind of be in that space, but also to see the length of history or the depth of history.
Yeah, sure.
To look at something and be told and realize that it's 2,000 years old.
Yeah.
I remember going to, I think it's the main museum in Taiwan. And it's, when the Republic government fled to Taiwan and they took a whole bunch of stuff from Forbidden City and artifacts and gold and all of this stuff. And so I have this museum where they exhibit all of this stuff.
Wow.
And looking at paintings that are like 2,000 years old.
Yeah.
And looking at young Taiwanese kids or, looking at a young Chinese kid in Forbidden City and we're looking at something that's 2,000 years old.
Yeah.
and going, that must do something for the psyche of, for example, a 10-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because as Africans, our history was kind of, there's like, it's like before and after slavery. And we're still fighting to get our children to understand that our history does run longer than that.
Yeah.
There's not a before and after. There's not just an after. And I was fascinated just watching kind of Chinese kids, and when you look at the stuff that was invented by them. I mean, I wrote an article and I actually kind of went through a list, and we all know gunpowder, but it was like the seismograph or just, and I'm like, it does something. I think it does something for a person when you grow up recognizing and understanding that, no, I am part of a people that go. So when I came back from, I literally the day after I landed, I found my father, and I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, I understand.
When was it that you went?
I went in 2014. And then I went again, I think 2015, 2016, but that was like a proper press trip. I think I was there for 2 nights.
I really want to go sometime soon. Yeah.
But yeah, so that was, so China for me was that. It was also I guess, lamenting because their connection to their history is unbroken. It's like, it feels like an unbroken thread. And I'd also wonder what would have happened if ours hadn't been disrupted. Because now we know that our history runs a lot longer than slavery, etc. And we're still unpacking, You think about Mapungubwe, just in the region, Mapungubwe, Great Zimbabwe, etc. We're starting to understand that. But yeah, I'd have moments where it's just like, if that hadn't been disrupted, where would we be? Mentally, spiritually, physically, etc.
Yeah. Similar experience for me visiting. So I was just in Doha, among other places, and like Qatar is, I think it's the richest country in the world now. It's one of the top 5 GDP per capita. And because it's a very small country, like the scale of development isn't often spoken about in the same way as like China or the great, marvels of development right now. But like Doha as a city, it just blew my mind, man. Like, you just can't imagine how much development has gone into that place. Like, and it imbues a sense of confidence, not just in the present and the future, but in the past, because you can then bring the past into the present, which I think China has been able to do. And that gives you a confidence about the past in a weird way. And what's interesting about like the little details is that like there will be Islamic forms of architecture. Unlike maybe a Dubai where it's kind of just like the stock standard glass skyscraper. So there are all these little accents and you feel like you're living in like a modern, but Islamic super power for its size. And you're like, wow. Yeah, wow. And I don't think we've got to feel that yet in South Africa or on the continent. But in some ways, I feel if we do ever live to see it, or our kids or our grandkids, like that will restore a certain confidence in the past, not just the present and the future.
I think there's some architects that are doing that in small ways across the continent.
Yeah.
I do a newsletter for this publication, Ogoji, and I spend a lot of time just trying to figure out, because it's around design, innovation, etc. And I'm not 100% clued up, but
sure.
I'm good enough to be able to, scour the internet for really interesting things.
Yeah.
And there are some of the architects that are doing that are looking at even the materials.
Absolutely.
And I guess the hope is that we start to see a lot more of that. Funny enough, I've never been to Dubai,
Right.
but I did go to Abu Dhabi.
Okay. Yeah.
And from what I understood, like Abu Dhabi is a bit more traditional. So it did feel a bit more like what you're describing than what I see of Dubai in kind of terms of pictures and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. The Thabo Mbeki Library actually, I think, is doing something similar. And I forget the name of the architect. It's a Ghanaian architect, I think. And
is it Sir David Ajay?
May well be. I think you're spot on.
Some controversy
really?
around him, but
is it?
He's been for at least let's say the last 2 decades, kind of that. I mean, he grew up, and I think he's based in the UK. He is a Sir, but yeah, he was one of the first to kind of hit the surface where he's combining the two.
Yeah,
but
sure.
There has been some sexual harassment, I think, allegations.
Oh, really?
Stuff, but yeah,
that's sad.
But he's he comes here. I think he used to come here regularly.
Okay, yeah,
does some really interesting work.
Yeah, I remember him speaking about it, and what struck me was that the idea was they were trying to take historical fragments of African antiquity, but reimagine them into the present. So we don't know exactly what they would have looked like, but we have like a shard of pottery or like a material, and then try to reimagine them in the future, and just give like a visual representation of what it may look like in the future. And I feel like that, I don't know, like there's such a lack of architectural imagination in post-apartheid South Africa. Like we don't have these spaces which signify new creative frontiers. It's like, let's build like as many buildings as we can, and we think of that as development, and we haven't like thought about, and there's a cliche way of doing it, but I think that there are actually artistically sophisticated ways of like imbuing what a post-apartheid South Africa would look like, and feel like, yeah.
And there's actually such a rich base to choose from. I mean, you talk about that, and I think about a brand like Laduma, like Laduma's not Makosa.
Absolutely.
And it's being able to take that approach or that thinking.
Yeah.
That way of approaching design.
Exactly.
Where it's like you're taking something that is rooted in ritual, is rooted in culture. And you're reimagining it in the present.
Yeah, exactly.
And letting that evolve. And I was looking at some of his recent stuff, but I remember in the beginning where it was like the network, and you kind of go, okay, where can you go to from there?
Yeah.
But here we are like 10 years later, and he's gone in so many different spaces and so many different directions.
Yeah.
And I guess it's being able to capture that spirit and apply it to architecture, art.
Yeah.
You see it more in spaces like art, etc.
Yeah, music as well. Yeah.
And in music, but being able to kind of, particularly from an architectural perspective. I mean, we live in Joburg, so another, Tuscan-inspired complex.
And you're like,
I think we have enough.
Exactly, and even the state, like one would think the state could use the resources at its disposal to rethink what at least state architecture might look like, and in many ways we've reinscribed either colonial or apartheid forms, or just imported like modern cookie cutter forms.
Yeah. And Lesotho some years back, I don't know if it's still the case now, but I think they put in place a directive that government buildings needed to be built with limestone, because you can get the limestone from Lesotho, and the older government buildings, even the colonial ones, use these big limestone blocks. And there was a stage where it was like, no, government buildings need to be built with that. And it felt very, like I've driven and seen the guys carving out the limestone. We have it. It's here. And I guess it's to a certain extent being able to do that. And this country is so diverse and so rich in its diversity. It's like actually it's like a playground. It's like a playground for creativity.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That we could explore a lot better.
Fully agree. That's why we have such great artists. Yeah.
You talked about your son. What kind of father are you?
I'm quite a playful father, actually. Like I really enjoy play, and like silliness and humor, and having a child. I've got a second on the way, by the way, in April. Yeah, a second son as well.
Congratulations and good luck.
Thank you, sir. I'll take both. Yeah, and try to be present as much as possible. That matters to me. And not too authoritarian either. Yeah, I think one of my strong impulses is towards freedom and self-expression, and so I don't want to derive authority from like places of violence or places of like I know better. Obviously, there's an element of that when you have an infant and it's like this is how you walk. But yeah, at least that's what I aspire to be. Yeah, and also a tired father a lot of the time. I will say, of all the pursuits, and there is nothing that has, of course, been as joyful, but it has been as extracted more than parenting for me. Like that journey. I think when we spoke, I was expecting Hakeem potentially. So I think it was maybe on the eve of, or maybe but it was soon after. I think it was like 2020, like COVID times. Yeah,
2015, yeah. Or 2021.
Yeah. So Hakeem was born in 22. Yeah. So that's, at least those are some of the aspirations. Yeah.
What's your relationship with your father like? And would you say it's having an impact on what's impacting how you parent?
So it's interesting to the extent that, as I've already mentioned, I grew up and was raised by my mom, like pretty much from the get-go. So I don't ever remember a time when I lived with my father. So there's that. But I've always had an extremely loving relationship with my father, and I always knew right from the beginning that I was loved. So it's I don't have the resentment of not being loved or feeling loved. He's an extremely loving person, and so I never felt as though I had that deficit. But what I did have was I just didn't have a constant paternal presence. So my relationship with him is very loving, like and always has been. It's not necessarily a regular one. Like we can go quite long spans without speaking, but whenever we do speak, it's very, it's a loving relationship. So it's interesting from that perspective. Of course, nonetheless, as a father, like I've always wanted to make sure that I am there, because there's something about being there that matters. And so, but also being loving and affectionate, because you can be there and your child can still not necessarily know that you love them. So yeah, I think I draw from the experience both, what wasn't there and what was there that was good. Yeah.
I was just thinking about when you were, so you're describing that relationship with your father. I mean, he went into politics.
Yeah.
Then you kind of went into politics, but from a space where it's not in opposition to what he's doing, but kind of the space that would hold him to account and holds all politicians. And you do that a lot with your podcast.
Yeah.
Has there ever been a conversation about that?
No. It's more like, because it's just more personal, like he's just interested in my project, you know, and kind of supportive of the project. But we've never had like a conscious conversation about like, I'm in this role and you're in that role. No, and part of what I'm doing on the podcast is, I mean, it straddles, you know, so we're kind of doing similar things to what you're doing here, is rather than having a pure accountability focused conversation where it's like, well, Mr. Politician, you said you were going to do this and you haven't done that. Why not? It's more like I'm having conversations with influential South Africans. There's an element of accountability, but there's an element of human conversation. So yeah, it's not like, it doesn't grate in terms of our respective lives and roles as much as one might think. Yeah. And also you get different kinds of politicians. Like I've certainly met lots of different kinds. Like they fall into two categories. They're either like extremely thin-skinned and pretty much anything will offend and displease them, or they are like completely thick-skinned and like no matter what is said about them, they don't really care. And he largely falls into the other category. So I genuinely feel like I could go on and criticize MK and even criticize him if I wanted to, and he'd probably laugh it off.
So I was, and this is a perception thing, like when you invited me onto the podcast, I was actually surprised because in my mind it's just politics.
Yeah. It's interesting, and I'm sure you're also seeing this, like you always have to balance between what you want to do and what your audience wants to hear. And so my audience really wants to hear about political stuff. Like I'm like, hey, there's this cool artistic thing. And they're like, please tell us about the Mkhwanazi Commission. Like what happened yesterday, you know? So I try to sample different things at different times. But back to identity, it becomes a bit irritating at times because I'm like, I would like to think that I'm a much fuller human being than just my political views, which tend to already get people into defensive mode. But now I feel like I'm the politics guy, and like everyone, you know, like you go to a social thing and it's like, what do you think of like the state of the nation? It's like, I mean, yeah, I have a view on that, but I also like watch the Liverpool match and, you know, like art. And so, yeah, I guess we're living in an era where like your public avatar or persona can more than ever kind of shackle you into a certain identity, you know?
I mean, it's interesting for me because I don't feel that, but I kind of get how it can feel very restrictive and very constraining.
Yeah.
But that's just because I kind of I've always occupied a space where it's like I dabble in multiple things. But I do that, you know, kind of front facing.
Yeah.
So people aren't surprised. And also I stay away from the spaces where there are strong opinions and divisive opinions.
Yeah.
But that's just because also that's how I was raised. And then also navigating South Africa, not quite a South African. Well, I'm not a South African, but I kind of belong but don't belong. Like I've been part of the society, I've done stuff here,
Yeah.
but every now and then I'll be reminded that, oh, but you're not from here, right? So I've always stayed away from expressing my outwardly or publicly expressing my views on certain things that divide.
Sure.
Like, so religion and politics
Yeah.
are at the top of that.
Sure.
But politics especially, even though I have opinions, some that may be controversial, some that are, normal, but I never share that stuff. So because of that, I guess I have a lot more wiggle room. And then also doing this, my approach was, I like talking to different kinds of people.
Yeah.
So I talk to people that I find interesting, regardless of what it is that they do.
Yeah.
And I don't come across the politicians much. And I'm not going to talk to, if I talk to a politician, it'd be because they have an interesting journey.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I could probably talk to a politician, never actually talk about politics. Because I'm more interested in, growing up, the lessons that you learned along the way, et cetera, et cetera.
Those are the best conversations with politicians, actually, I've discovered. Like, but the funny thing is that they first don't hear the question. You'll be like, how did you grow up? Like, you'll be like, from a policy perspective, and it's like, no, I'm not going to come and get you later. Like, I'm not trying to trap you. Like, and then sometimes you see like it click, and I love that. Like, that's actually part of what brings me joy from the conversations I have, is like bringing out a different side of a person that no one ever expected. And then you suddenly realize that you may actually like think you really dislike this person, and then suddenly you're like, actually there's a lot of identity, or vice versa. Like, you think you love this person, and then
you discover
exactly
who the person really is.
Yeah. And man, boy, like, wow, man, I think I've met everyone in politics at this point, and there's some interesting surprises that you find, like, interpersonally. You might love someone's political speech, and then you meet them and you're like, no, you're just not a nice person. Like, and vice versa. Some actually really interesting, good people, and you're like, but then why do you have this political belief? Like, what happened? Like,
what are you doing in that space?
Yeah.
I went to varsity with one or two people, but there's one in particular who eventually ended up all over the papers, and we actually were in high school together for about 2 years.
Okay.
He got sent to Lesotho during the 80s when things were tough here. And then we reconnected again many years later. Well, not many, but a couple of years later in varsity, because I went to varsity in Durban.
Okay.
And I remember him going into, eventually ending up kind of in politics and in the middle of one of the big scandals.
Oh,
and
wow. Yeah.
I remember bumping into him in Sandton City and going, dude, you now look like you're 20 years older than I am. Where were you going? What were you doing? Like, why did you do this to yourself? And yeah, so that's the one area the way I've always kind of been on the edges, comfortably on the edges.
Yeah.
I mean, even in Lesotho, my father used to say, like, people in the society did not know where my father stood when it came to who he voted for. Because he was like, if that's front and center as a starting point, already we're divided. Like, we can't find any type of common ground because you support those people and I support these people.
Exactly. That's a struggle I find, because like one of the things I'm trying to do is hold a place where people from lots of different perspectives do come. And I'm not necessarily playing the traditional role of refereeing those perspectives, but rather bringing them to the audience to say, have a look at all of the different views. And I think the people like who are longtime watchers and who are true supporters really appreciate that. But the noise is just endless. Like it's an extreme sport, you know, to be involved in political analysis in South Africa. But I think one thing I've been grappling with a lot over the last, I would say, 5 years is like this public versus private thing, social media, identity going out of your control, and how you make peace with the fact that there is a version of you that is living and metastasizing in the world that has some connection to something you might have done, but is quite different, you know? Yeah. I don't know how you've dealt with like the social media world. I see you've withdrawn quite a lot.
Yeah.
Which is something I have the impulse to do, but I'm also then like, I feel like that's where I kind of almost work there in a way. So just navigating like the need to still produce, but not necessarily consume.
I mean, I was an early adopter for most things. I mean, I had a MySpace. I had two MySpace accounts in 2006.
Wow.
And I blogged every day on a 2-week poetry tour of the UK. I started my first email newsletter probably like 2004. And I still have 2 blogs online in what I call my digital graveyard. My first newsletter, I used to type it into a BlackBerry and send it out to, eventually I had like 100 people. And it was just like my thoughts on poetry, because that's when I was, and then on books that I'd read. So generally, like Twitter, I think I signed up for Twitter, must have been like 2008 September, when it was just kind of Americans, many rappers, and then a couple of the tech people in South Africa.
Right.
And did the one Christmas where I was going into the browser to tweet. And it was occupying all my time, and I'm like going, oh my God. And so I've tried with everything. But in the last couple of years, when I was a Destiny man, I remember maybe 2012, part of my getting the job was because I was already active on these spaces.
Right.
I mean, like on Facebook, when I joined, I already had like over 1,000 people on Facebook.
Yeah.
Like this when, the early days. And
I
got like 1,200 people. And it's like, no, this guy knows what's going on in that space. And it'll help the magazine. But about 2013, I mean, I left there, end of 2014, but already kind of towards the end of 2013, I felt blocked in by it. Because I had to do it because of my work. It was like, it felt like it was a tool for work. So I need to be there. I need to be, I need to have a voice. I need to be vocal. I need to interact with people. And kind of over the last 4 or 5 years, it's felt less important, or less necessary for my work, which has also coincided with my son getting to 18, and it's coincided with my getting a sense that I occupy a different space in this society, coming from a place where supposedly I was important because I had certain job titles and my opinions were relevant in the cultural space, particularly music, etc. And kind of going, cool, but it's just another opinion. and becoming all right with that, and having a son who grew up. I mean, he was born in Joburg. He's properly, my children were born in Joburg. They're Joburg kids.
Yeah.
And they're now carving a space for themselves. And my son is known in certain spaces amongst his generation, and he makes beats. And I've talked about it before. Like, he has music and he makes beats, and he started when he was like 13, 14.
Cool.
So discovering his name outside of the family. I mean, he was the Tego, the producer, and then the first time I had somebody go, "Oh, you're Tego's dad."
Yeah.
And realizing, actually, you know what? It's now becoming their time. And I do have a place, but it's a different space. And having an opinion on, music and culture and what's going on is like, I actually don't want to go there, first of all. So to have an opinion, I don't really have a valid opinion. And so that's kind of helped me. With the podcast, I mean, I think I said to you earlier on, and I've talked about it before, like last year, I did get to a point where I was starting to get anxious about this thing that I'm doing. Because I'm like, oh, I need to, because I work with storytelling, I work with content.
Yeah.
I kind of know the things that you must do and how you must structure it, and creating an editorial plan and creating a social media plan, and knowing the platforms and starting to get anxious about not doing that stuff, but also not having the capacity to do it. Like I don't have enough time, and I don't have the resources and the support to be able to do all of those things. Like I can see them. I know exactly what I need to do to get more people, to get to get it in front of more eyes, and in front of or to get access to more ears. And seeing that pathway, but going, but I can't do it, and then stressing about it. And so because of that, I'm back to look, I'll do what I can do. And I know that I have a community out there. I know that there are people that listen and appreciate this thing. But as a starting point, I just like talking to people and learning about, reflecting on their footsteps and reconnecting with that, and going, you know what, everything else will come. My community will never be as huge as the people who are interested in politics, for example. And that's fine. Like I'll never be or the gossip or the whatever. Like I'll never be all of those things, but I never was.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of knowing that there's a community out there that this thing has a relevance and a context, and it helps their lives, and that's cool. So yeah, with that, with social media also, it's been a kind of natural years. There were years when I'm like, okay, I need to do a detox. I need to get off Twitter or X now. I need to get off there, because when I go on there, it just makes me feel bad. And now I haven't been on. We're talking about it. Probably the last time I was on was like 2 months ago. And when I go on, I'll literally just go on and look at stuff. I'll be looking for something. I'll go, oh, I should actually share an episode. And then I'll go on and I'll share it, and then I'll leave.
Yeah.
So that's been my kind of journey with it, and then kind of extracting myself from, I was always fascinated by, when I was younger, like there's older people, when they disappear, we assume that things are bad. But also realizing now more and more is that we don't see people, but they're living really good.
Yeah, if anything. That's the dream.
And with a friend of mine, we used to talk about the falling off dream. It's like when society has said you've fallen off, meanwhile you're sitting on an island somewhere.
That's where you want to be.
Minding your own business. Like Tom from MySpace.
Yes. Yeah. No, it is. I mean, it's something I'm grappling a lot with now, because I would say with Entity in the music, there was quite a lot of public recognition in a certain window. And then, I went to the Royal Eastern Cape and it kind of dissipated. But I would say last year, like the podcast hit a point where I was again now grappling with like what it means to be in the public sphere and the public space. And whenever I get there, I'm always reminded of why I run away from it. Because again, it's very limiting. Like I came back from a trip, and like the best thing about that trip was like nobody recognized me and wanted to give me their political opinion on like what's happening. And but also like it really deprives your humanity and your dignity in many ways, because you become this plaything in the public space, in the public sphere, and there's a certain ownership of you that's not in your control that then becomes a toy for people like in these spaces, and yeah, I just like started to feel the intensity of that quite a lot last year. Like it was at a different level in my life to what it's ever been before, and it wasn't necessarily always a pleasant thing.
What do you do outside of the podcast?
Listen to Liverpool podcasts most of the time. I mean, look, I have a job at Wits where I teach, and I love that in the way that I think the last real job where you can still have great freedom is the academic world, and I love that about the academic life. Look, it might not pay like being an investment banker, but you have freedom, and that's worth a lot. So I teach. I'm about to teach a first year class of 500 students. Nothing will make you feel older than teaching first years every year. So yeah, like I have the academic life, music, family, which is about to expand considerably, and of course football. Yeah, like big Liverpool fan. I watch a lot of Premier League, and I'm usually watching some crazy fan podcast.
Well, it helps that we support the same team.
I mean, of course, the superior team. What can we say? Like, it's not our fault. Yeah. Not going through a very superior moment right now, but hey.
Nah, it's all good.
Yeah.
We can do that as defending champions.
Yeah, exactly.
What's exciting you right now?
On the other hand of what I just said, what's exciting me is building a platform that actually has real influence in the direction that I wanted to. Seeing something I've worked on for 7 years now coming to fruition. That, and I feel like hopefully I'm on the cusp of something big this year. Like I feel like I've done all this work to get to this place, and now I can have fun with it. Now I can do the things and reach the people that I want to reach and shape the discourse like I want to shape it. And that is immensely, empowering. So that's exciting. Like I can't wait for this year on the podcast, because like now people want to come. Now, and now the people that I want to come too. So what can I do if they come? And so that excites me. That really excites me. And artistic creation excites me. So now that I have this element, like what can I do with those projects that I harbored for a long time and didn't have the resources or the bandwidth to do. What can I now do, with this platform for other parts of my pursuits? So, yeah, and there's an election year coming up, so there's going to be a ripe audience for this, and I do feel like for this election, I don't know whether it'll be like that next year or the year after, but I feel like this platform is the right platform for this moment, and it's going to have a big impact on the election. So that excites me. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Glad to have. We've now done full circle. You've been on my podcast.
Absolutely.
I've been on yours.
Thank you for listening to this conversation. Please leave a review and subscribe. Check out the show notes for links to the guest, the podcast, and myself. I hope you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed having it.